one of the challenges of being 6'7" tall is A, you don't sit in the front row, because I get fed up with people sighing behind me, and B, you have to constantly move the microphone. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners or custodians of the land, because we're all really custodians of the land. I often reflect on the fact that the traditional custodians have probably done a lot better job on sustainability, having been here for 10, 20, 30,000 years, or whatever the local group have been associated with the land is, and I'm not really putting money on whether we'll be here in 1,000 years. However, I felt that I could sort of go home after Peter Kenyon and Norma's talk, because they've said so much already. So I'm not a storyteller. I know Peter said that the world is not made up of atoms but stories, but being a scientist I have to remind everybody that every atom has its story. And normally I'm giving a talk about climate change, so forgive me, this isn't a story, it's a stream of consciousness. The person that should be here is Lisette Salmon. She is our Norma, she is our Peter Kenyon, and she is our Helen Haynes. So all these groups often depend on people with particular, their skill is often energy. But anyway, like a lot of things, we grew, I mean, Norma said her group grew out of a council get-together, and I acknowledge, I work for a council, and I acknowledge Peter Kenyon's remarks about how councils can just give up on things. But don't forget they are a great resource as well. We actually grew out of an organisation called Albury Wodonga Environment Centre, AWEC, and their driver was a man called Dr. Dennis Black, amongst others. And poor things, they had struggled for many years. They'd been very strongly associated with the Greens, so I think they were seen as a Greens party. And they had a sort of final fling on World Environment Day, I think it was 2007. And a lot of people came to that, probably well over 100, and we moved into different corners of the room, and I had tried previously to set up a group that was going to try and persuade politicians to do more about climate change. I learned about climate change in 1975 when I was 16 and just watched the science build from there. So we decided in our corner of the room to create some sort of lobby group or activist group or advocacy group, and I'll come back to those words. We decided ultimately on to be advocates for the climate, and we formed Watch Wodonga Albury Towards Climate Health. It couldn't be Albury Wodonga Towards Climate Health because that would be Orch, which doesn't sound quite so good. So having a catchy name is great. And we did waste a year trying to design a logo. My advice is never try and design a logo by a committee. Just ask someone to do it. The renewable, the yak mob, the renewable mob that's doing the 100% renewable in yak, they've got a great little yak, yellow yak that they put on the front of buildings that are part of the thing. So you can use words and logos very usefully. You must have an agreed goal, and you must make sure people know what the goal is. Ours was something like to engage with those in positions of influence to do more on climate change. We naively thought that we could go to, I was just saying to Helen, that we thought we could go to politicians with the science and say, this is what the experts say. Thanks very much. And you're all, this is what the experts say, and we thought the politicians would say, oh wow, that's what the experts in the field are saying. We'd better lead the people towards the, a better future. That was a bit of naivety. what we've discovered is you've actually got to make 51% of people think something, and then the major parties will go, that's our policy, because suddenly they think they'll get more votes. We didn't incorporate. As I said, Lisette has become our convener, our dynamo, our everything. I'm the chair simply because I run the meetings, and I have such a monotonous voice that people get the meeting over really quickly so that they go to sleep. And we meet, we've probably not got the energy we had 12 years ago, because we've often spawned other groups like the Stop Adani group, and other groups that are basically working towards a renewable future and controlling emissions. It is a journey. You have to be willing to learn. As I said, we wasted a lot of, I mean, we still engage with people like Susan Lee and Bill Tilley, and now Justin Clancy, but in some cases it does feel as if you're just going through some fairly murky motions, not a nice picture. Gather ideas from your group. The more diverse your group, you've probably heard this, the more diverse your group, the more ideas you'll get. And they often seem like left field, but they will spark other ideas. We latch on to other campaigns. I should say our challenge is possibly unique amongst some of your challenges here, in that it's a global challenge. So we're working locally, but as part of a global, there's nothing Watch can do that is going to save the world. So a lot of our work is trying to engaging with wider communities. So our group belongs to Northeast, better get the name right, the Northeast Regional Sustainability Alliance, which is called NERSA. The only money we pay out really is to belong to CANA, which is the Climate Action Network Australia. And that immediately, so Climate Action Network Australia, that's formed of groups like Australia's Farmers for Climate Action. It's formed of groups like 350.org, Australian Conservation Foundation, as well as groups in the next town. So that plugs you into what everyone else is doing. Some of our best, I suppose, actions, if you like, and I'll come back again to that word in a minute. We had an eminent persons statement. So we got local people like Lauren Jackson, the basketball. I'm not really a sports person, thank you. Basketballer, fantastic basketballer, because we thought, and it did happen, thank you, that people would respect the views. We're all followers, really, and sometimes if somebody you respect thinks something, you think, oh, they think bad. Ross Brown from the Brown Brothers Winery, they had simply had a board meeting and said, what's this thing called climate change? Invited some experts in, and from that board meeting onwards, they were doing crazy things like buying land in Tasmania so they could keep their cold varieties going. So that worked well. Humour, I think Peter also mentioned humour and art. We had a wonderful mock wedding outside Susan Lee's office between Mr. Desperate for Political Donations politician and Baroness von Filthy Polluting Coal, Oil, Gas and Fuel. And I can say she did not bear a resemblance to Gina Reinhardt in any way whatsoever. And obviously that was highlighting the union between, unholy union between political donations and then taxpayer funded fossil fuel subsidies. We did that with one thing, following Tony Abbott's mantra of 3-word slogans, don't make things too complicated. We did have a little action where we donated a cheque of an amount back to, I think it was outside Susan Lee's office, of the equivalent amount that was spent on fossil fuel subsidies. It was so complex that the media didn't get it, and it was probably a wasted effort. Try to build numbers. We communicate with our base through an e-newsletter, and we do a little bit of social media, but we're all about, probably our average age is older than the average age of this room, so we're not great at that. Harness your passion, and when I say harness, I mean harness, because if I disagree with something that Helen says, and I run up to her in the street and throw a custard pie in her face, I'll get that 15 minutes of fame, but all I will do is push people further into the corners that they're already in. Some people say, oh, I told you that, they were a mob of lefty pack of greedy bastards, and the other mob will say, yeah, go on. So try to think of who you're talking to. You're trying to change minds. You're not trying to convince people. I mean, there are people that, there's still a flat earth society, so you're not going to convince some people. Don't waste your time on the absolute climate skeptics, or we don't. Work on the people that you can get off the fence in the middle. It's very easy to preach to the converted. I've probably gone over time already, but when I say harness your passion, control it. So use it usefully, and yeah, that's probably it.